A millionaire groom left his bride-to-be at the altar, but when she reappeared years later, he was left speechless with shock. "Henry, please." Everyone was waiting. Emily Carter's voice quivered as she stood at the far end of the lavish ballroom, surrounded by towering arrangements of white roses. Her chest was tight with anxiety. Her heartbeat was so loud it drowned out the soft string music above. The guests, an exclusive mix of business tycoons, celebrities, and high society figures, sat in ornate chairs, sensing the tension in the air. Henry Sterling, tall and dressed in a custom tuxedo, stood just a few steps away, one hand gripping his phone, the other clenched at his side. The crystal chandeliers cast dazzling patterns onto the marble floor, heightening the drama. Emily had imagined this moment for months, walking down the aisle under gentle candlelight, exchanging vows with a man she loved. But now, something felt terribly wrong. Henry's phone rang again. He had silenced it before, but the caller was persistent. Jaw tight, he checked the screen. The crowd saw a flicker of fear cross his face. "Henry?" Emily called again, her voice breaking. "Who is it?" He hesitated, then answered. The guests fell into an uneasy silence. Some craned their necks to read his reaction. Emily's parents, seated in the front row, exchanged worried glances. They understood how unpredictable the world of the ultra-wealthy could be. Rumors, sudden conflicts, last-minute secrets. Emily heard a faint, muffled voice from the phone. She couldn't make out the words, only the desperation. A woman. Color drained from Henry's face. His confident stance faltered. He whispered, "This isn't the time." But whatever he heard next made him recoil. His grip on Emily's hand loosened. A cold sweat trickled down her back, filling her with dread. The silence in the room became suffocating. The voice on the phone grew urgent enough for nearby guests to catch fragments. "Henry, I'm waiting for you. You can't marry her if you love me. Come now." The world seemed to tilt beneath Emily's feet. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Press cameras, invited by Henry's influential family, zoomed in, recording every second of the unfolding disaster. Henry gently released Emily's hand. His face was unreadable, distant. "I'm sorry," he said quietly, just for her. Then, turning away in his polished shoes, he walked out, phone still to his ear, leaving his bride surrounded by wedding finery, stunned and speechless. For a moment, Emily couldn't comprehend what was happening. A strangled gasp escaped her. She stumbled, clutching her white satin gown. The full impact of his abandonment hit her like thunder. Whispered rumors swept through the crowd. "He just left her. Is there someone else? This is a scandal." Snapping out her daze, Emily felt tears streaming down her face. A sob tore from her as she stood at the altar, a bride without a groom. The officiant, shaken, stepped back. The wedding planner rushed forward, but it was too late. The spectacle was beyond saving. Across the room, Henry's family distinguished men in suits and elegantly dressed women watched with cool detachment. Among them, Henry's mother, Evelyn Sterling, wore a look of satisfaction, as if this was the outcome she'd wanted. Cameras flashed. The lights above felt harsh and unforgiving. Emily felt the walls closing in. People stood, a mix of curiosity and pity. Someone tried to guide her away, but the noise in her ears drowned everything out. Her dreams of a fairy tale wedding vanished in an instant. The humiliation was overwhelming, but the heartbreak was worse. She looked at the sparkling ring on her finger, the ring Henry had given her weeks before, promising forever. Now he was gone, walking out as if she meant nothing. Emily's tears flowed harder, under the gaze of the crowd and the press. Her heartbreak was captured in every photo. Amid the chaos, she realized her humiliation would become public gossip. All she could do was stand there, crying as her life unraveled. With that single phone call, she became a spectacle. Her dreams shattered like broken glass. Emily's worst fears materialized faster than she ever imagined. By the next day, tabloids splashed the canceled wedding across their covers. Sterling wedding shocker. Emily Carter, jilted gold digger. The scandal shook New York's elite. Paparazzi camped outside her modest apartment, pestering neighbors for gossip. Online forums buzzed with rumors. Some accused Emily of cheating. Others called her a con artist exposed. She tried to ignore it, but the negativity seeped in. Even her social media was flooded with ridicule and insincere sympathy. She deactivated her accounts to protect herself. Friends from high society quickly distanced themselves. Invitations disappeared. Even old acquaintances avoided her to escape the scandal. Her work life suffered too. Emily, a junior marketing associate at a promising firm, was summoned to her boss's office the day after the scandal broke. He looked at her, torn between sympathy and concern. "Emily, I'm sorry," he said, tapping his pen. "The executives don't want negative publicity." She pleaded, insisting she'd done nothing wrong at work. But it didn't matter. Her name was now toxic. The company refused to risk the PR fallout. Desperate, she reached out to Henry's family for help, but received only cold, formal statements. "We respect Henry's decision to end the engagement. We never approved of the match." Nothing more. No compassion, no responsibility. Emily was left to bear the shame alone. Rumors of another woman turned into vicious speculation. Some tabloids claimed Emily knew about Henry's affair. Others called her an opportunist who failed to trap a wealthy husband. The city churned out cruel gossip faster than she could respond. One stormy night, heavy rain pounded the city streets as Emily hurried home, her groceries in hand and her hood pulled low to avoid recognition. When she reached her modest apartment, she found paparazzi waiting under the awning. Camera flashes erupted, startling her and causing her groceries to spill, vegetables scattering into the gutter. Blinded by the lights, she escaped down a side alley, tears mixing with the rain as she collapsed on the wet pavement, sobbing. Through her tears, she whispered her hatred for Henry Sterling and made a quiet vow. One day, she would make him pay. In that moment, her pain hardened into a resolve she never knew she possessed. A determination for revenge was born right there on the rain-soaked sidewalk. In the days that followed, Emily disappeared from New York as if she had never existed. She quickly ended her lease, sold her few belongings, and erased every trace of her former life with Henry. The paparazzi lost her trail, and her former friends assumed she had fled in shame, which was mostly true. She needed to escape the city that had turned against her. Emily moved from place to place, a cramped motel in Philadelphia, a rundown studio in Baltimore, a sublet in Chicago. At first, she drifted through life, taking whatever job she could find waitressing, cleaning offices at night, or dog walking just to survive. Her days blurred together, haunted by betrayal, but beneath it all, a spark of ambition remained. She remembered her rainy night vow to make Henry pay, but she soon realized that revenge alone wouldn't rebuild her life. She needed to become strong, independent, and untouchable, someone who could never again be destroyed by the whims of the wealthy. Emily Carter, the abandoned fiancée, began to transform into Elena Carter, an ambitious entrepreneur. Her first step was enrolling in a short business management course, spending her waitressing tips on textbooks, and studying finance, marketing, and leadership. She spent sleepless nights in diners, poring over spreadsheets and case studies, her grades soaring as she channeled her determination. Though older than many classmates and carrying a painful past, she excelled through sheer willpower. Small opportunities arose as she built connections. An older investor in Chicago, impressed by her diligence, gave her the chance to manage a small fashion boutique. The pay was modest, but the experience was invaluable. Emily threw herself into every aspect: inventory, marketing, budgeting, boosting sales with creative social media campaigns, and partnerships with local designers. Her reputation grew in Chicago's fashion scene, and soon other small businesses sought her consulting. She saved every penny, eventually investing in a micro-loft in an up-and-coming neighborhood. She used it as collateral, flipped the property for a profit, and gained confidence with each success. By the time she formalized her business as Carter Company, specializing in branding and real estate, she was no longer the naive bride from years before. Her client list expanded, and her new name, Elena Carter, became known for ethical business and sharp problem-solving, far removed from the scandal that once ruined her. Years later, Elena stood in a penthouse suite in Manhattan, returning to New York for the first time since her humiliation. The city's skyline greeted her as an old adversary, But this time she faced it with confidence. Dressed in a tailored suit, her reflection revealed a woman shaped by both suffering and strength. News of her return spread through business circles, and soon, Henry Sterling would learn that the woman he once abandoned had come back transformed. Elena didn't announce her return with fanfare. Instead, she quietly re-entered New York's elite circles, using shell companies and third-party funds to acquire stakes in strategic properties and businesses, always under different names. With each discrete acquisition, she tightened her grip on the city's real estate market. Sterling Enterprises, Henry's once mighty real estate empire, became one of her primary targets. From afar, Elena had tracked the company's weaknesses: underperforming sectors, internal conflicts, and risky overextensions. Her goal wasn't just to match Henry's wealth, but to gain enough power to bring him to his knees. Through anonymous investors, she began buying up shares in Sterling Enterprises, spreading her purchases across multiple entities to avoid detection. Henry, confident and distracted, never noticed the threat growing within his own company. Outside the business world, Elena made calculated social moves, attending art galas, fashion shows, and charity events to build alliances with influential figures. The media noticed the poised, mysterious businesswoman, but no one connected her to the jilted bride of years past. She became a topic of admiration and speculation, but her true identity remained hidden. It wasn't long before Henry and Elena crossed paths at a real estate conference where he was the keynote speaker. Elena, sitting quietly in the back, studied the man who had once broken her heart. Henry still appeared charming and confident, but she sensed cracks beneath the surface anxiety about projects that sounded too ambitious. After the speech, Elena was introduced to Henry as a rising star in private equity. He shook her hand, intrigued by her presence. Though he couldn't place her, "Sterling Enterprises is impressive," she remarked smoothly, her voice steady. Henry responded with confidence, suggesting a private meeting to discuss future developments. Over the following weeks, they exchanged professional emails and met for business dinners. Henry, unaware of her true identity, was drawn to Elena's intelligence and poise, even flirting with her. At a grand charity ball, Elena arrived in a white gown reminiscent of her wedding dress, capturing the attention of the entire room. Henry, captivated, greeted her with awe, unsettled by a vague sense of familiarity. As they danced, Elena played her part perfectly, sharing details about her company and investments, while Henry grew more fascinated and increasingly curious about who she really was. The press photographed them together, fueling society gossip. Their connection deepened, with private dinners and subtle hints from Elena designed to keep Henry off balance. Though she remembered the anger that fueled her transformation, spending time with Henry now stirred conflicting emotions. He remained charming and magnetic, capable of lighting up any room. She remembered the joyful times they had shared before their wedding, the secret kisses, the long walks late at night. Part of her questioned whether any of it had ever been real. At the same time, Henry found himself fixated on Elena Carter. She was both unfamiliar and strangely reminiscent, stirring up regrets he thought he had buried. Sometimes her gestures or a fleeting look would remind him of Emily, the subtle tilt of her head, a certain softness. Late at night, he would lie awake, replaying the painful memory of his ruined wedding. He had tried to put that day behind him, even as the media feasted on Emily's misfortune. Was it possible that Elena was somehow connected to Emily? Maybe a relative or an old friend. The idea seemed far-fetched, but the suspicion lingered. He often reached for his phone to investigate Elena's background, but every official record confirmed her story. She was from Chicago, had built a reputable business, and no one else doubted her identity. He tried to convince himself that he was imagining things, but the tension he felt around her wouldn't go away. Meanwhile, Elena questioned her own intentions. She had come this far to make Henry suffer as she once had. Yet, whenever she noticed a genuine concern in his eyes or heard the sorrow in his voice when he spoke of past mistakes, she hesitated. The relentless drive for revenge clashed with the remnants of affection she still felt. Would ruining him really bring her peace? Or had she trapped herself in a situation with no easy way out? One evening, while reviewing blueprints for a potential real estate project in Henry's penthouse, the truth nearly surfaced. The city lights blurred behind rain-soaked windows as they sat together, surrounded by documents and takeout containers. Elena stood by the window, arms crossed, watching the storm. Henry joined her, looking tired and contemplative. She saw his reflection in the glass, studying her with a haunted expression. "I can't shake the feeling that we've met before," he finally confessed. Elena forced a light laugh. "New York can feel small for people in the same circles. Maybe we've crossed paths at some event." He shook his head. "It's more than that." Turning to her, he searched her face for answers. "You remind me of someone I hurt, and I've always regretted it." A wave of emotion swept over her, longing, anger, and heartbreak. She nearly lashed out, but managed to stay composed. "Everyone has regrets," she replied, turning away so he wouldn't see her tears. Their conversation grew more personal as the night went on, skirting dangerously close to the truth. Henry spoke about the disaster of his canceled wedding, a subject he rarely discussed. "Her name was Emily," he said, voice thick with remorse. "I was supposed to marry her. She was kind and sincere, but I failed her." Elena listened in tense silence, her heart pounding. "A call came just before the ceremony," Henry continued. "I was told Emily had been unfaithful, that she was only interested in my family's wealth. My parents pressured me to break it off. My mother claimed she had proof of Emily's betrayal. I was a fool to believe them without any evidence." He swallowed hard. "But none of it was true. I learned months later, after Emily had vanished, that my mother had fabricated everything. She never thought Emily was good enough. My father was involved too. They manipulated me, played on my insecurities. By the time I realized the truth, Emily was gone." Elena struggled to maintain her composure as tears threatened to spill. She remembered all the nights she had cursed him for his lack of trust. Hearing him admit his mistakes reopened old wounds. Part of her wanted to scream at him for his weakness. Another part felt a flicker of sympathy for how he, too, had been deceived. Desperate to hide her identity, she pressed her lips together. "And if you ever saw Emily again," she asked, her voice trembling, "what would you do?" Henry looked out at the rain, eyes full of regret. "I'd beg her forgiveness," he whispered. "I'd tell her I loved her, that I never stopped. I'd do anything to change what happened." A storm of emotion raged inside Elena. She wanted to shout, "I'm right here," but anger overpowered her love. Where was that devotion when he left her at the altar? Even if he had been misled, he hadn't trusted her enough to seek the truth. His family's lies had only worked because he let them. In that moment, her resolve returned. Determined, she moved forward with her plan. Over the next weeks, Elena quietly sold off her shares in Sterling Enterprises, causing panic among other investors. Rumors of major stakeholders' exits spread quickly, sending the stock tumbling. Banks demanded repayment. Old rivals closed in. By the time Henry understood what was happening, the damage was already done. A severe crisis overtook Henry's company, threatening to destroy everything he had spent years building. At the center of the chaos was Elena, formerly Emily, quietly orchestrating the downfall. The collapse of Sterling Enterprises dominated the financial news, with headlines chronicling every dramatic turn. Henry was overwhelmed by margin calls, lawsuits from investors, and endless emergency meetings with anxious board members. His once mighty business empire was on the verge of collapse. But instead of focusing on saving his company, Henry was gripped by a different kind of desperation. Amid the turmoil, Elena had disappeared. He called her constantly, sent countless messages, and visited every place he thought she might be. But all his efforts led nowhere. It was as if she had vanished without a trace. Meanwhile, Elena watched the company's destruction unfold from the safety of a luxurious hotel suite under a false name. Every day, she saw the company's plummeting stock prices and the relentless media coverage describing Sterling Enterprises' rapid decline. She reminded herself that this was the justice she had wanted. She had finally delivered her revenge. Henry was now experiencing the same humiliation and betrayal she had once endured. Yet, when night fell and she was left alone, a deep emptiness crept in. The satisfaction she expected never came. All the years of planning and hard work had led to this, but the victory felt hollow. Her thoughts drifted back to the pain on Henry's face when he spoke of Emily. He had said he still loved her, that he had been misled. Doubt began to gnaw at her. Had she misunderstood him? Would things have been different if she had confronted him sooner? As a last resort to save his company, Henry started selling off his personal possessions, cars, properties, even treasured family heirlooms. The final blow came when his parents withdrew from public view, refusing to help him and blaming the disaster on his poor judgment. Devastated by their abandonment, Henry left a brief press conference, ignoring the barrage of questions from reporters, and took a taxi away from the Sterling Enterprises tower. He went to the only place he thought Elena Emily might be, a small townhouse she had once mentioned in a private conversation. Though she'd never told him the exact address, he pieced together clues and arrived in the pouring rain. He knocked on the door, calling her name, but got no answer and collapsed on the steps, soaked and defeated. Suddenly, a car pulled up. To his shock, Elena stepped out, holding an umbrella against the rain. For a long, charged moment, they simply looked at each other. Desperation filled Henry's eyes. "Does ruining me make you happy?" he asked, his voice raw. "If it does, then congratulations. You've succeeded." Elena struggled to find words. She hadn't expected to see him so broken, so vulnerable. Her hands shook as she held the umbrella. She had set out to destroy him, and she had. But seeing his pain, she recognized her own suffering reflected back at her. They entered the empty townhouse, the sound of water dripping from their clothes filling the quiet. Finally, face to face, the truth came out through tears and halting words. Elena revealed that she was Emily, the woman Henry had abandoned at the altar. Overwhelmed, Henry buried his head in his hands, realizing the full extent of both her deception and his own mistakes. "I believed lies about you," Henry said, his voice shaking. "I let my family's fears come before our love. I'll regret it for the rest of my life." Elena's anger melted in the face of his remorse. "For years, I imagined this moment. I wanted to see you suffer. But now that it's here," her voice broke as tears welled in her eyes. The endless cycle of revenge had left them both wounded, exhausted. They sat together on the bare floor as thunder rumbled outside. Henry whispered, "I'd give up everything if it meant I could prove how sorry I am. None of it matters if I can't," he hesitated, "if I can't love you again." Elena let out a trembling sigh. She had waited so long for him to choose her, truly choose her, without his family's interference or hesitation. In the quiet of that townhouse, she realized she stood at a crossroads. She could continue seeking revenge, or she could let go of the pain. She looked into Henry's eyes. Then, almost instinctively, she leaned in and kissed him. The kiss was full of tears, but also of hope and release. They knew the pain wouldn't simply vanish, but for the first time in years, they faced each other honestly, without pretense. Whether they would rebuild their relationship or part as friends was uncertain, but the hatred that had bound them was finally gone. In that fleeting, rain-soaked moment, they allowed themselves a hope for forgiveness and the possibility of healing.